to the truth when the blue comes on.
Hey, everybody, it's your girl, Deshawnda Carter here, but you can call me DC. Thanks so much for tuning into my show, When the Blue Comes Off. Today, we have a wonderful, wonderful woman, NYPD, none other than Kimberly Bowen. Bowden? Bowden.
Bowen.
I said it wrong the first time. I said it right, but this time I
Yep.
got it wrong. But Bowen.
Mhm.
So, let's talk about you being an NYPD officer. Like, that's like most people think when they say NYPD, I would say men dominated because, back in the days, police officers automatically meant men. So, but for you as a woman, what made you go into that line?
It was recommended to me by someone who knew me pretty well and thought I'd be a great cop. I loved helping people. I loved being a problem solver. I loved helping children. So I got excited and took the test. And from there, I was very eager to become a cop.
So I know when I took the test, we had to have investigators come out to the home and actually interview our neighbors. How was that? When you grow up and you might have been a little bad kid on the block. Did that happen for you? Like, did they come and interview? Did you get any bad reports?
I did not. And I don't remember who they interviewed, if they interviewed anyone, but I was a good kid. I never cut school. Never. I had a mother that the whole neighborhood would know if you were in trouble. So I never did anything wrong, honestly. And when I took the test, I was a mail carrier in New Jersey. I was working since I was able to work at 16, 15. I had paper route. I always worked. I always walked a straight line. Parents that would have annihilated me if I did anything wrong. So there was nothing in my investigation in becoming cop that I would ever had to have worried about. I was a good girl. I had a paper route. I worked at a roller rink. I worked at a food store. I was a mail carrier. And when I took the test back in the day, it was in the 80s, it was either housing, transit, or PD.
So it was the one test that it was a combination. You could go anywhere, or
it was one test. It was one test, and it was luck of the draw. So they called me up at the post office, and my postmaster said, "Hey, you got a call. Come in here. It's important. It's the police department." He's like, "What kind of trouble are you in?" I'm like, "Nothing," because I didn't let him know I was becoming a cop.
Right.
And I was going to leave that job. And I said, "Oh, okay, I'll take the call in the office." And the guy on the phone said, "Hey, congratulations. You're going to transit. You're going to be in the April 24th, I think, or 25th class." And I was like, transit? I'm like, fuck. I didn't want transit. I wanted NYPD blue. So I was so upset. So I was like, okay, great. And I hung up the phone. I finished working, went home, never said anything to my mother or anybody. And the next day I'm at work and they call again. And they said, "We made a mistake. Your test score was so good, you're going to housing." And I was from Jersey, and I was like, housing? Now, mind you, I had friends that lived in the projects, but I didn't know it was the housing authority or housing police department. So, and I had a friend that lived on 112th and Madison Ave that I would go visit all the time. And I knew he lived in the projects, and the family lived in the projects. So when the cop said to me on the phone, "Yeah, your test score was so good, you're going to housing, the housing police department." And I was like, "Housing? You mean like senior citizen homes?" And he's like, "No, you ever see the blue and orange cars?" I'm like, "Yeah, but I like the blue and white cars better. I want NYPD blue." And he said, "No, you're going to housing." And it was the best job I've ever worked on until the merge. Because, we merged in 1995. And that was, I had 5 years on before we merged.
So that's what happened with my test. So my test was corrections and PD.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went, and that was the last test that there was a combination.
Okay.
So I started in 98. So 95, that was the last class that they did the combination. So I was hoping that corrections called me, not PD, because I didn't know if I wanted to be outside. But, my mom was a correction officer, so I had a lot of insight as to, what to expect. But yeah, I think that was the last test that they did the combination. So we both got what we want. And the end result, right? Because you ended up going to NYPD, right?
Yeah. So what's funny? I ended up going to NYPD, but I ended up leaving the job. I laterally transferred out to Aurora, Colorado. And I was there for about 8 or 9, in July of 94. and I was out there, and I didn't like solo patrol. It was very deserted at times. I felt very alone on patrol. There were other cops on patrol, other cars that would, respond if I needed it. But I had one incident where I pulled someone over for speeding, and I was on my own, and I got out of my car. The car I pulled over was silver with black tinted windows. And I remember as I was walking to the car, I got a chill come over my body. And I got to the back of that car, and something told me, do not walk any further. I tapped the back of it and I said, you're good, go ahead. I felt after that moment that I was going to get shot that night. I felt like there was going to be somebody in that car that was going to shoot me through the window. And it was the weirdest thing. I never had a fear like that or feeling like that. And I remember after that night, I was like, you know what? I shouldn't have come when I came. It was great being in Colorado, but I started wanting to go back, and I had a year to go back. So January came, and I had a friend that worked in the housing authority and said, if you're going to come back this week because we're merging and you'll be able to go back. So there was a chief, Gerald Nelson, in housing. I don't know if you remember him because a lot of people
No.
knew him. He was great. I ended up coming back. I went to the housing authority the next day, and I was back. No, I went back to work the next day. A weekend, they told me I couldn't work anymore. I had to go through the academy again. And I was like, oh my
What?
God. I just came out of an academy in Colorado, which was harder than the NYPD academy. So I went home and I hung out for a few days. I actually went to my mother's house in New Jersey because my sister was there, hung out for a few days. And then I got a call. My friend said, come meet Chief Nelson at headquarters right now. He's taking you to get everything signed. We went everywhere, the range, the shooting range, the driving range, the academy for gym stuff. He had them sign. I got back on that job the next day. I didn't have to go through an academy again. I had
Girl,
just
you are
gone through
lucky because I'm
very,
sure.
very lucky. And I had a year to come back. So I don't know why they were doing that, but
So
it was,
how much time in between? Like, was it like right at the cusp? Because they say you have a year, but
oh
was it like
no, it
eight
was, no,
months?
no, 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 no. It was 6 months. No, like 4 or 5
Okay.
months. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah.
Well,
I was there
probably
for
because of the merge, they probably were just trying to,
yes, and I think they were just trying to do things different, and I was like, "Not today." So I ended up going right back. I was in narcotics at the time. So when I was in housing, I was on patrol, and then I was in the bike unit. I was the first group of people in the bicycle unit in the city. If you remember the bike unit?
I do.
Yep. So housing had the first bike unit. It was run by a great woman, Sergeant Anna Tortorici, who worked under Chief Ziegler. I don't know if you remember him.
I do know Ziegler.
Yes, great man. And he was in charge of special projects in the police department. So I was in that unit. Then we got our Glock guns. Then
Because
through
that's when
that,
because is that during the time they transitioned the weapons? Because I know
yes,
in
yep,
corrections we had, yep, they
yeah,
transitioned, right?
yep. So during that time in the bike unit, I ended up getting the Glock gun. We changed from the 38 revolvers to the Glocks, and I still get my other gun. But then I ended up, being I was a busy cop. I was gung ho. I always wanted to make arrests and be busy. I like being busy. And where I worked was at 115 and Fifth Ave, and it was the angel dust capital of the world. So everywhere you looked, there was somebody buying. You could smell it in the air. It was like a minty smell. So I was
Now,
easy
at
to
this
grab
time,
people.
were you still an officer at this time?
I was still an officer in the bike unit.
Okay.
So I was on
Okay.
patrol for a few years, then went to the bike unit. Then from the bike unit, I went to anti-crime.
So wait, before you went to anti-crime, on the bike unit, you were still patrolling
I was
where
still
the
patrolling Spanish Harlem.
bike.
Yep. So, and let me tell you, the training for the bike unit was no joke. We were training out of Queens at Ravenswood. It was a satellite housing unit in Queens called Ravenswood. And we would ride our bikes from Queens to Manhattan to Brooklyn and back. They had taught
In
us how
one
to
day?
ride in the day. We would go every day from like 7 to 4, and we would do it. My hips got so much smaller when I was riding those bikes. And I remember just, I could not believe how athletic I was because of it. They taught us how to ride bikes upstairs, downstairs, jump curbs. It was a great training. It was a lot of training. It was a lot of bike riding over bridges, and I was afraid of heights. Being a housing cop, I was afraid of heights. I would go to roofs, and I would grab the electrical wires on the roofs and hold on for dear life, checking the roof to see if there was anybody on the roof. Because if you had patrol and they said you got to check the stairwells, you got to check the roof, you have to check it. You can't say you checked it. And 2 days later, they find a dead body up there, or someone OD'd
Right.
or whatnot. So you had
Right,
to
right, right.
check. And I was afraid of heights. So I would go in the bike unit, we'd go over bridges, and I couldn't look down because I was like, oh, I'm going to throw up.
But also you're on the side of the bridge. So it's not even
Yes.
like you're in the street. So you're on
You're
that
on the
little
you're
tight
on you're
edge,
on that
no
walkway.
barrier on the outer part.
And it's the great, so all you looking below is where you're gonna fall if the bridge opens up, you know what I'm saying? So, yeah, that was crazy, and then, even checking the roofs when I was on patrol. So, anyway, I did patrol, then I did the bike unit, and then I went into anti-crime, and that was a fun unit, plainclothes, anti-crime unit. I was still a cop because you had to have 16 months or 18 months in a investigative unit to get promoted to detective. So, I
Okay.
did that, and then I ended up going to Housing's Manhattan North Narcotic Enforcement Unit, which was still up in Spanish Harlem. And I worked there for a while. And then in the middle of that, I left, went to Colorado, came back, and went right back in that unit. And I stayed there. We merged. And then I transitioned to NYPD's narcotics unit, which was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
I've never heard anyone say anything about being in a narcotics unit being so much fun. It's just probably a lot of excitement. I don't know, fun because
It was fun. You know what?
girl,
I honestly, even when I was alone, I would get nervous being by myself on solo patrol because a lot of times, when you're new as a female, I was 5'5". I was small, 130 pounds, 125 pounds. Anybody could pick me up and throw me off a roof. I would get very nervous. I would always want to, maybe catch up with someone so we could walk the project together. Because once you're in a building, you're locked in. There's no help. And you got to remember, all right, what's the address? What building am I in? And they used to train us that way. Like what we could do like stairway patrol, and our training officer at the time when we first started would say, "What building are you in?" And we would look at each other like we had no idea. We were following you. But at
right,
that moment, if you call a 1013, which is officer forthwith, come
right.
forthwith, officer needs assistance, this is emergency, I couldn't tell people where I was. So I remember constantly in the academy, they taught us repetition, repetition, repetition. I would say the number 1995, 1995, Fifth Ave, or wherever I was.
Right.
But I would be by myself a lot. And then, after walking patrol, you end up getting into a car with someone. I had a partner, and then he ended up going somewhere else,
So
transferring. So
would you say like as the rookie, you start out on foot, specialized unit, then get in the car? Because the way that I perceived it was like after the academy, everybody just goes straight into the car.
So no, when I first got to my command, people already had their seats in the car. So unless somebody called in, you didn't get in the car. So they put you on a foot post somewhere. If there was a dead DOA, dead body, they'd put
Hmm.
you there. You'd be sitting there, or they had a hospitalized
You
prisoner.
had to babysit the dead body.
Dead body, the person in the hospital, the injured, perpetrator that had to get sent to the hospital. So you were a babysitter, but you'd learn, you'd meet people, and then you'd walk around. Then you'd get in a group of people, like your little training group. You'd walk around, Johnson houses or Jefferson houses or East River houses or Douglas houses. And you would do things, you'd make arrests together. So you started feeling comfortable, basically taking people's freedom away, because that's what you're doing. And you learned how to do it. You learned what was even though they teach you in the academy, when you're out on the street, it's like, okay, what do I got? You had to like
Right.
kind of remember. Nobody remembers the book. Nobody remembers, all the
Well, that's the
laws.
one thing about training in anything, right? You spend all of these hours and time and days just learning books. But when you go out into the field in any environment, it's never the same. It's never the
Yeah,
same because the adrenaline is much higher. Um, the circumstances is always almost a dangerous situation, 9 times out of 10. So all of that book stuff goes out only
it
when it's
does.
time to do the writing, not the actual arrest or the actual, use of force because you're in it in that moment. The book
Exactly.
stuff comes back when you say, "Okay, let me write down what transpired," because now you have to figure out what you just did because
Yeah.
it wasn't in the book.
Yeah. So there were times when we grabbed someone in the street. We knew they committed a crime. They'd have drugs on them. We didn't know how much. We didn't know if it was a misdemeanor or a felony by the amount of what they had. We would come in, we'd go to the desk officer. I remember a lot of times the daytor was Lieutenant Phillips. And I'd walk in, I'd throw stuff on the counter. He goes, "What do you got?" I'm like, "I don't know. You tell me." What am I charging him with? Tell me exactly what the best thing is, because I know I got control, criminal possession, controlled substance, but what
Right.
degree, I don't know. And he would always look at it and be like, "Right, you got this." I mean, that was what his job was for. He was getting paid the big bucks for. But I would go out and do my job and bring it in, be like, "What do I got? What are we doing?"
Oh, so wait a minute. The desk sergeant is the one that makes the money? Okay. Everybody noted desk sergeant. Okay,
Desk
got it.
sergeant, desk lieutenant, who's higher ranked. Yeah. But I worked in a great command with great cops, great people. There were a few other females on the day tour that I'm still friends with to this day, 30
Mhm.
some odd plus years later. Females that I was in the academy with, I am still friends with. I know a couple of the guys, but the girls, the sisterhood is alive and well. I am friends with, in the police group that we're in, Peroline, she and I were in the police academy together. There's a bunch of Enos's and Enids and Lisa's, Cindy, everybody. We are still friends. 35, it's going to be 36 years.
Well, that's
And
good. Law enforcement at the end of the day, some bonds are not meant to be broken, especially when you've had incidents together, being stuck overtime, mandations,
yeah,
um,
DOAs.
all those things, right? Fortunately for me, I didn't have to experience so much of that, but I understand. But let's go back to you have completed your training. You went through all of these different areas throughout the department as an officer. When was it that you transitioned, became a detective?
So I had been in narcotics for like 18 months total, like with investigative time on the book. And I became a detective after that. I think it was in like 1995, I became a detective. And yeah, that was a great day. I was excited. It felt good to be promoted as a woman, If there was one or two women to every 8 or 9 guys that was getting the same thing. Every unit we were in, there was always a female, that token female, whether she's white, Hispanic, or black. And some
Mhm,
units looked for a Spanish girl, a black girl, or a white girl. They could say whatever they wanted, but they were looking for people that were multilingual. They were looking for people
mhm.
that had certain looks. You know what I'm saying? And which is
Right,
fine, it's fair.
because it's
It is
based
what it
on the
is.
unit. Mhm.
Yes, based on the unit. Some units it was based on your production. How many arrests you made, how busy you were, what kind of college you had, if they were misdemeanors or um and felonies, anything. They were looking for quotas, like what not so much quota, but your production, the work you've done.
Okay,
And a
the
lot
work
of
that you
times
had to put in to deserve the
yes,
spot. You
exactly.
had to
You had to
deserve
show
and earn
yeah,
the spot.
yes. And there were people that were in these spots that had family members that were chiefs and whatnot that were in these spots
Well,
that didn't deserve it. But everybody
the
that I ever worked with, we all worked together and we all filled a void for whatever was missing.
so in comparison, you seem very passionate about your time as an officer. So that time versus the amount of time that you did as a detective, because we will touch lightly, unfortunately, took sick, you were hurt rather on line of duty and you couldn't finish out. So the amount of time that you had in being a detective versus being an officer, which one did you like best out being out of the two?
You know what? I liked being a detective because I was in plain clothes and it was like, the cool thing to do. But as an officer, all the different things I did and the different people I met, just being in the projects, there were so many bad people, but there were so many good people that you would come across, families, children. I loved that. I loved the food in the neighborhood I worked in. I loved the community activities in the neighborhood I worked in. It was a great area, in Manhattan, and I was well known in that area. People would call me by my first name. They talked to me in Spanish, realizing I was Italian, not Spanish. And I couldn't speak a lick of Spa- I knew how to order my coffee and my pan planchado con queso y mantequilla, and that was it. But I would try to always accommodate everyone, and I love that. In the detective unit, we did more investigations, and we were more of a like an entity, and like an amoeba. We were together a lot. There was always certain people that were together doing their investigations. So we weren't dealing with the public as much as I did when I was on patrol. And I
Mhm.
like that. I like being out there, going to the west side, going to the east side, handling people's problems. Here I was 21 when I came on the job, and I'm going to apartments where a husband and wife are arguing. They've been married for 20, 30 years. And I'm saying, who the heck am I
Right,
to be
right,
a
right, right,
psychologist in this marriage? But I did my best. And I always tried to treat people the way I wanted my grandmother to be treated, the way I wanted
right.
myself to be treated. And I always thought I did a good job with people, with their feelings and what they were looking for in life. And, it bothered me when I had to arrest someone. I mean, if they were blatantly doing something that was illegal, then, oh, well, it is what it is. But when there was a
Gray area?
order of protection or whatnot. Here I had an incident, order of protection. We come across a couple that are hanging out drunk, yada yada
Mhm.
yada. Somebody called to complain on the noise they were making. Turns out he had an order of protection against her, and I had to take her. And she was crying, he's crying. He's like, no, 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 no. And I'm like, my sergeant's like, you got to take her. And I'm like, oh, took her to the precinct. She's crying. I mean, it was the fastest arrest, fastest DAT, fastest bringing her down. It took whatever I had to do that day. I think she had to go downtown, down to the tombs, and
Mhm.
I felt horrible because she was a great woman. They were a couple. They had a bad day, and he had an order of protection against her and never had it removed. And I had to take her freedom away from her that week. And some days like that bothered me, but the days when it was obviously the right thing to do, I had no problem doing it.
So that leads me to the question. Then, I don't know if that was actually your worst day, but in your line of work, up until the time you were no longer on the police force, what was a worse day than that? Because you gave us a good one, because that I know that had to be bothersome. I can see that being conflictive. Like, come on, there's still a couple, but rank was pulled and you had to take her in. But was there any other event during your tenure that you would say was a really hard day for you?
So there was a day, and it wasn't my arrest. I mean, besides obviously later on 9/11, but before that, I was still on patrol. I think it was in the bike unit, and I was in the command, and an elderly gentleman was brought in, and they were interviewing him, and then holy hell broke loose. There were people screaming, crying. Turns out he had assaulted his granddaughter in a sexual manner,
Oh.
and that shit stuck with me every day. Anytime I hear about any kind of that, I think of that. And I believe her name was Kimberly Rodriguez. And I remembered it because her name was Kimberly, like mine. And she was a beautiful little girl, and the grandfather was raping her. And she had to have been about 6 years old, 7 years old. And that wrecked me because I had seen them, and you would never know what is happening behind closed doors when you're seeing people in the playground and you're seeing them. And then when I saw him, and I don't know if the family beat him up or what, he was beat up, and they brought him into the investigation room, and I think the detective office, squad room. I just couldn't believe it, and that bothered me, knowing that little girl's life would never ever be right. Her innocence was taken. And how do you
Well,
protect people like that? I had sex assault in my family, a family member of mine, and what it did to our family destroyed us. And then that being a cop and seeing that, like in my heart, I always wanted to help and maybe stop it or deter it. But you can't. You
mhm,
can't be everywhere, and you're not behind people's closed doors. But that wrecked
right.
me. That bothered me. I've seen dead people. I've seen people chewed up by their animals after they died and were in the apartment with their dog for a week.
Mhm.
I've seen some of the nastiest stuff, some of the worst DOAs. Oof. But that seeing that little girl and knowing what he did to her, that is one of the worst days that I remember.
And I just hope and pray that she was able to get the help that she needed to live her life fully, because I'm sure as a granddaughter, you put all your trust in your parents, your grandparents, and just
Yes.
to have that taken away from you has
Yes.
to be very
Like you're
hurtful
supposed to
and
endure it.
confusing.
Yes.
Well, here's the flip side. One year when I was an officer, I used to work in Brooklyn Criminal and Brooklyn Supreme Court.
Mhm.
And there was a young man. He wasn't an adolescent, but he was a young man, like 21, anywhere from 18 to
Young
23.
adult. Young adult.
And he used to babysit his niece. And the niece wasn't even, I believe, 1 years old. And he was penetrating the niece
Oh, yeah.
to the point where her insides were all damaged. Luckily, she did not perish, but she had um a lot of problems down in the vaginal area.
Physically, yes. Uh-huh. That's a
And
shame.
this is where I can agree with you and says you don't know what's going on behind closed doors. So this is why when children are acting out in school, a lot of times teachers and counselors, they're so bombarded and overwhelmed because there's so many kids, right? They can't give this one-on-one attention. But I strongly suggest that before they go straight to disciplinary action, there needs to be some intervention, because sometimes
Yeah.
these kids are definitely being abused, whether it's sexual, physically, mentally. I think we need to
Yes,
focus
I
a little bit
agree.
more on that,
I
you
agree.
know?
Yeah. I had one other incident when I first became a cop, and I probably within the first month or two, across the street from my command, a little girl, she was a foster child, and her two siblings, well, three of them were placed with a mother and her son. And the mother was at work, and they were bunk beds. And the son was on the top bunk bed with the other little brothers, the foster brothers, while their foster sister, her name was Yorandia Lewis, was asking for food. I guess she was hungry. She wanted a sandwich. He got mad. He jumped off the bed, landed on her, and stomped her to death. Yes. And I had to go to the 2A precinct where the little boys were, another officer and I. She was from the 2A precinct. And then they had me go. There were two little boys, and it was Edward Lewis, and I forget the brother's name. It might have been Michael Lewis. And I remember I wanted to adopt him. I called my mother. I'm like, can we adopt him? I might need your help because I'm in the Bronx and you're in Jersey, but I'll have him go to school in Jersey and you can help me out. And she's like, you're crazy. And I was literally a month on the job. And she's like, you're not going to be able to do this with every kid you come across. You're going to be adopting everybody. And I remember he had cigarette burns on his back. He had cigarette burns on his arms. He had belt buckle marks on his body. And I was like, I can save him. I wanted to save every child that I saw that had some kind of conflict or abuse in their life. And I would have gone crazy trying to do that for everyone. And it was tough. That was another hard thing on the job, knowing you couldn't do what really needed to be done. You could only get them to a certain point, people, and it had to go to another area. There was another girl.
Right.
We went to an apartment. The mother died. Her daughter was mentally, I don't know what the proper word is, but she mentally retarded. She couldn't speak. She couldn't write. She, I think, had issues seeing. And when we got to the apartment, the mother was passed away. Her breasts were missing. So we believe she might have had a double mastectomy. We didn't know. The daughter was in the house for a week and she was urinating in jars. We had to take her down. I think it was 7 Late Street, where you give her to the state to bring her down to town because they didn't know who to get in contact with. So we had to basically give her to the city. And what happened to her after that, I don't know. But she needed someone to take care of her. She was like 20 years old, 18 years old, with the mind of a 1-year-old. And I don't know the
there for
proper
about a
term.
week. So how did they find out that
Like
she was
4
there alone?
Because the smell. And then when we went there, the landlord said there should be 2 people in there. And she was in there in their house. I guess whatever food she was eating, but she was going to the bathroom in jars. And there was like 30 jars in the house of urine. I don't know why there were so many jars there, but I remember saying like, what the heck is going on? And
There
now that
wasn't a bathroom?
the mother was on the floor in the bedroom, I believe. No, they were the jars were lined up on the floor and then some on a shelf. It was weird. And I was like, how did she know to pee in the jars? Like, why didn't she go in the toilet? It was just some weird, people live differently and who knows why she was like that, if it was something that was going on with her. But the mother passed away and there was no father there. There was nobody there. I don't know if they looked through paperwork to see if there was someone they could reach out to, but we had to take that child who couldn't even speak, was rocking and couldn't communicate with us. And that was another bad, like I said, what happens to her now? Like what becomes of her? Where does she go if no one claims her?
I don't know if you believe this, but I believe this, that law enforcement personnel with situations like this, we become hardened or sometimes immune to it, right? But we do not necessarily seek out. I don't know about PD because I know I've heard that they put you out on, like, I don't know what the terminology you would use, but it's almost like a leave for you to be psychologically evaluated to make sure.
Yeah, that I never had to do, or I don't even know about that, but I could understand that. I could see if I was working in the special victims unit, I might have to do that because I don't even know if I would have been able to handle what I've heard, the horror stories. And we see the crimes. We know what happens to children and people. And I don't even know if I could have stomached that. I think I would have wanted to do my best for the memory of the person and for justice, but I don't know what it would have done to me. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I think I'd be okay. I don't know, but I never went that route. But seeing what I did see.
I thought it was something that was like maybe mandatory, like if you, depending upon the crime, that they would say, hey, Kimberly, you need to go take a couple of days
Well, I'm
and
thinking if you're
regroup.
in a shooting, maybe there's
But
something
you didn't have to have that happen to you.
No, never. Nope. At the end of the day.
Okay, so we're going to change the tone. We're going to change the tone.
Let's change the tone because I'm
talking
talking about a lot of negative things.
Let's talk about some positivity. Okay. So give me an example. What was a good day? Something that is extremely memorable to you during your tenure with the NYPD.
So I had one arrest one time. It was man with a gun. It was on 11th and Lexington Ave. And I'm going, ED's calling it over. And I'm like, man with a gun, go, go, go. And I'm telling my partner, let's go, let's go. And we get out the car. So I start running. They give the description of the guy. I'm running. And I had the swivel holster. My swivel holster fell off. The swivel fell off. I had to stop, pick up my gun. I grab it. I ran down the street and I grabbed the guy, and I ended up getting the arrest. I like grabbed him, jumped on him, we fell down. His name was, I don't even want to say his name because God forbid he's out of jail now. And he was wanted for murder in Miami. And I ended up
Okay.
going to Miami for the trial. They flew me down to Miami and I was there for like 5 days and I interviewed with the DA's office and then I had to testify. But that was a very good thing. I got a gun collar out of it. I got a lot of overtime and I
Look
got
at
a
you,
trip.
girl.
I got
You
a
you
trip out.
like that excitement. I'm like,
Yes.
I've been waiting for like the good, apple pie story. She's like, no. The most important day or the best day of my career was when I got that dude and tackled him
Mhm.
and cut the collar.
I got the collar,
Yes.
got the overtime, I got
And the money. Yes.
commendation. Yep. And then I went to Miami and I was sitting by poolside and I went to
Just waiting to
trial.
testify. Just
Yep.
waiting to
Mhm.
testify on the
Had some
beach.
good food. Met some great cops in Miami, detectives in Miami. That was in 92 and 93. That was great. I mean, there were great things when I was in the bike unit. There were a lot of community events. One time, my girlfriend and I, she's retired also, Marissa, we were dressed up as clowns.
For
And
the
here we
event?
are. We have our uniform on and we have clown suits on top of it. And we're riding our bike to East River houses to do this outdoor block party.
I hope it was the wintertime because with the uniform
Oh,
and
no, it
the
was the
costume,
summertime. It was the summertime.
girl.
But and I had this big curly wig on. She did it was crazy, but that was fun. Doing community things was fun. But yeah, I wanted to get gun collars. That's all I wanted. I wanted to have like a rack of gun collars. I wanted to, yeah.
You thought you was gonna clean up the street? That's
Yeah,
what you were
guess
trying to do?
so.
Or was it just the
I guess so.
excitement of
You
catching
know
them?
what? I think I wanted to prove myself to the guys, I think in the beginning, and then I had the excitement of it. I wanted to get gun collars. And I remember I was working with this girl, Cheryl, and a gun call came over and we get to the car. I was in a livery cab and I yank open the door. I jump in, I grab the guy. I'm like, give me your gun. Give me your gun. And it was a gun, but it was a fake gun. But it was still a gun collar, but it was not a real gun. But listen, he'd have got shot for it.
I was
It
just
was
getting ready to
metal.
say, like, that's the
He would have got
problem
shot
with
for
these
it.
fake guns.
He would have got shot for it. But yeah. And I was like a little disappointed from that point on. I was like, all right, anytime a gun caller comes over, I'm going to go for it. I was so gun ho for a
Gung
gun.
ho for the gun collar, okay? That's a
Yes,
nice
so,
little one. Gung ho for the gun collar.
yes.
Copy
But
that.
I mean, you would walk in a building, there'd be people trespassing. It was an easy collar. Then you'd find when you search them, they had drugs. So things would escalate, but it was a great job. I loved it. I wish I never left. I wish I was still on it. I'd have 36 years now. I had great relationships with both men and women, but I mean, the sisterhood is real. I am still friends with a lot of the girls that I worked with, that I was in the academy with. Two girls I worked with died. One died. She was in an accident. Her chest hit the steering wheel and she got really sick and she died. And another girl died. She actually hit the lottery and wasn't a cop anymore. And she died like, I want to say 8 years later. But I had some great memories. We did some great trips together. The females
you
doing ski
You're still
trips.
doing great trips. We're not going to even talk about because you know our
So
favorite place. You know our favorite place. You know,
yes,
this is
yes,
not
yes.
only my sister in blue, but she loves Aruba just like me. If y'all don't
Y-
know, you can always catch me in Aruba, okay?
Yes, yes. With the
Matter of
real
fact, you
Aruba
just came from
sisters.
there.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Going into now, there's the police group, the finest wonder women of the shield,
Yeah.
with both active and retired law enforcement females only. And we've done so many great events. We've done fundraisers. We've done pocketbook bingo fundraisers. We've done Toys for Tots. We've collected toys for tots. We have done trips. We went to Barcelona, 102 of us. And there's over 3,000 or 4,000 females. I think there's like 3,700 girls in the group. And we've got
Nice.
girls from London. We've got girls from France. We've got girls from everywhere. The United States, a lot of NYPD corrections
Mhm.
officers and police officers and detectives. But I love it. I love the sisterhood. I love that we're still close. We don't always talk police. We have children. We've got husbands. We've got wives. We've got, whoever's with whoever. We've got families. We've got real life problems happening. We've
Right.
got people getting old now, getting sick, injured, can't do the same thing they did before. And we try to support each other. And it's a great, great group that we have, which you just joined recently. And you got
Yeah.
to get to some of our events, but it's a
I
lot
will,
of
but you know I'm out here in these streets right now. I'm
I know, you're
trying.
busy. You are a
I'm
busy
trying.
woman. You are busy, but I'm gonna lasso you in my
Yes, with
lasso,
that
and I'm
Wonder
really
Woman, Linda Carter style, okay?
yes, like
Linda Carter, yes. If
yes.
you're not old enough to know who Linda Carter is, then you should be listening to this
Diana Prince,
show.
Wonder Woman,
That's right.
honey. Yes, but yeah, no, you got to get to the events. They're a lot of fun, and the girls are great. We've done brunches, we've done dinners, we've done a lot of fun stuff.
Well, since although you're not in law enforcement anymore, but the time that you spent, what advice would you give to a young woman in today's elements
So
about being law enforcement?
what I would tell young women or the young me, I would say great career decision. Always keep your head up, always be your best self and do what's best. Do your job, but do it
Mhm,
better than anyone else. Make yourself proud. Make the people you're helping appreciate the fact that you were the one that helped them. So many people get mediocre help. People just do their job because they got to do their job. I love doing my job. And when you love doing your job, it comes back to you. I always was treated well. I was treated with respect. The only time I wasn't treated with respect was with other male cops that were, disrespectful or whatnot. But the people,
mhm.
I remember I arrested a guy, and on Mother's Day, he didn't know if I was a mother, and he brought me flowers. He came to the precinct and brought me flowers. And I had arrested him not once, but twice. And he came, he's like, you always were very good to me. But you want to keep your head up, do your job, and advance because the future's female. We are amazing. Women are amazing. We're tough, we're resilient, and where women are involved, things are calmer. It's not so rough. It's handled better, I believe, when women are involved.
I
We're
agree.
not going gung ho and, taking things up another notch. Nobody's trying to get hurt. No one's trying to get anybody else hurt. And I truly believe treating people with dignity, always treat people with dignity because it will come back to you.
I
And do your
agree.
best. Do your very, very best. And go as far as you can. I listen, I took the sergeant's exam. I went to one study group. I should have went to every one. I can kick myself now that I didn't advance on the job because there were so many things to be offered,
Mhm.
FBI training, forensic training, a lot of different things. The MOI training where you can, be a better speaker and go to events and, be that person, the point person at a crime scene and, just a lot of investigative stuff I could have done better and gotten into and trained more at. I wish I did because the
Well,
job,
they have to be as gung ho as you, first of all. They got to come
yeah.
in hungry like you wanted it because not
And you know
everybody's going to
what?
come in like that.
Yeah, and I feel sorry for them if they're not. Like, I'm not saying go to work and go crazy because I didn't go crazy, but I enjoyed it. I got paid to hang out in New York City. I got paid to be in New York City. I remember being on top of Smith Houses when the World Trade Center was still there and just looking at that view and saying, how many people that I grew up with in New Jersey are able to stand here and get paid to look at these sites and deal with, and have fun while you're working. Every day was different in New York City. No 2 days were ever alike. You never met the same people. Same problem. Excuse me.
Well, I'm
It
glad that you took this time to come and share your story with us.
I'll come anytime you want.
Yes, ma'am. We're gonna get around to some of the Wonder Women and get their stories too. So let's
Yes.
plan
Yes.
that.
And just so everybody knows, I am an admin in the group with two other amazing females. One I was in the academy with, Pearline, and another one I worked with in housing, Marisol. And we have been friends for 36 years, and I want to say 34 years, 33 or 34 years, Marisol and I am, and we are still friends to this day. And we care about the sisterhood. We care about supporting one another in life, in the job, off the job, everything.
So tell the people again what's the name of the Facebook group. If you are
Yep.
law enforcement female,
Yep.
either retired or active in any capacity, you want to be a part of this group. And what's the group called
Yes.
again?
It's called The Finest Wonder Women of the Shield.
Sounds great,
Mm,
doesn't it? So
it's a lot
again,
of fun.
thank you, detective, retired
You're very
detective.
welcome, darling.
And we look forward to seeing what's going to go on with you and keep doing your community service as you do. We
Yes.
appreciate you. And
Thank you.
thank you for your service.
Thank you. And I appreciate what you do. Thank you for having me. You're amazing.
Thank you. So, guys, thank you for being here on When the Blue Comes Off. Hopefully, we'll see you next Thursday. So, make sure if you have not subscribed yet, you subscribe to my YouTube channel, Simply Carter Corp. And have a wonderful, wonderful day.